Hi, this is a literary criticism essay on The Handmaid's Tale written by Roberta Rubenstein in 1988. Nature and Nurture in Dystopia, The Handmaid's Tale. So, in this essay, Rubenstein examines the use of nature imagery and symbolism to portray female sexuality, reproduction, and maternity in The Handmaid's Tale. She opened the essay with Margaret Atwood's Canadian experience that connected her most with the issue of survival. And she also explained how she feel like it was the condition of female experience later on that took Atwood explicitly closer to feminist perspective and survival. She also feel like this book in particular is the answer to the question of whether or not to reverse back to the pre-feminism wave time period, and if so, how could a government do that? Rubenstein brought up other works by Margaret Atwood prior to The Handmaid's Tale and pointed out how she sees these imagery of nature and nurture in her poetry written in a very complicated form. I'll go through 8 quotes that I found interesting in the essay, and in the end, I'll summarize what to take away in my opinion about this piece. Going to the first quote, both public and private worlds are radically altered, exaggerating the unresolved cultural and ideological controversy over the circumstances of procreation. Here she says, public and private worlds, which she also specifically elaborates in the essay that it is to address the correspondence between personal and political that Atwood has in her writing on the social government trends, and show how exaggeration of what happened if the trends were taken way too far, which in The Handmaid's Tale, as we have seen, the novel critiques gender inequality and the autocratic authority. When approaching such issues on the reproductive rights and feminism, Rubenstein was right that it is unresolved cultural and ideological controversy because these topics are as relevant and controversial today as they were in the book when it was first published. And in the Republic of Gilead, since procreation, according to these men, are considered as something moral, as this is what humans are supposed to do to bear children so that the country will not die. And I believe Rubenstein think that pro-life and pro-choice reproductive ideologies in modern society supports female hesitation about childbirth under the patriarchy, and these actions were being portrayed through the language that Atwood used in the book is considered as exalted and dehumanized. On to the second quote. Not only is the female body used as a tool for reproduction, but bodies in general are objectified and described in terms of parts rather than as wholes. The word objectified that the author used here means when women's bodies are treated like a thing in a very dehumanized way. And in the Handmaid's Tale, Offred and the other handmaids were tortured in an extreme form of manipulation. Offred feels disembodied and she does not feel a connection with her body anymore. And then skip forward to, she even said, give me children or else I die. There's more than one meaning to it. And I found it interesting that she said it has more than one meaning, since it made me realize that the Gilead regime is fairly new, and perhaps it has not had an opportunity to brainwash its citizens completely to such an extent. On to the third quote. As we have known, the handmaids' names are removed, and the handmaids search for an open place. The walls of Gilead reduce the dialogue to amputated speech, which in this context, the author, I think, also explained it as a language of danger and distance because she doesn't know who to trust. And when Offred goes on her daily trip for food, she can speak to Offglen, for example, but she only can communicate with her in idiom phrases because she was being watched. And the idea of past experience versus the present time was highlighted in the context of the 18th century Christian hymn. Despite being religious, the society is still outlaw because this is an overlap of things that had already occurred in the past, but it just made it seem like a new beginning. And the structure of female fertilization in the novel is characterized by Alfred's flashback, I think. So this enabled a clear juxtaposition between Gilead and pre-Gilead world. Okay, so I think the author perhaps also recognized how Atwood feels about the 1980s. Many people felt like there shouldn't be no more waste and women should just be back in their homes. Therefore, it's really important to Atwood when she wrote this book. And the picture of a trained pig here means somebody who does everything for her master orders. As we have seen how Offglen was Alfred's grocery partner, but she just cannot trust Offglen, like I said before. However, she doesn't want to be like them, but she has to also realize that there is no other choice, but they have to keep acting the way that they are currently do. The distinction between natural and unnatural, between human and non-human, don't even have a clear bright line anymore. Next we have, as the sense of smell is more typically assaulted by the unnatural, so is the sense of taste and the experience of hunger. References to the smell of food also demonstrate the perverse connection, or disconnection, between sensory stimuli and their objects. So we know bread traditionally represents life because it is a basic foodstuff used to sustain life and everything. And I think the author trying to say food is used symbolically in The Handmaid's Tale, and the smell of the matrix is unnatural. It's the handmaid's own flesh, and it's the smell of blood, it's the smell of food the handmaids are given, or symbolically fertility. Some food that we can think of in the book are apples, oranges, eggs, bread, or any like baking in the ovens. So the author believed that food is like sex in Gilead. It's served only functional, not emotional, which means you don't need to feel happy, sad, or desire to eat a certain food to have them, but you just do so because it's life and it's part of their life. They have to attend a ceremony monthly, or we can call it like date rep. This is the term that the author used in her essay. It's a form of having sexual intercourse with someone you barely know, and it was being forced not willingly. So beside the smell of food, it's the smell of birthing and sin that Alfred feels. The connection here can be just her memory of Luke and the time spent with him in the past. But there has been an invisible disconnection between them since then, since he doesn't know her life right now. Moving on, we have, accordingly, it is a treacherous smell that she must resist in order to not be overwhelmed by loss. So Rubenstein also talked about how Alfred expands on the connection between food and sacrifice. She retains this survival instinct even in the most threatening circumstances. Only near to the end, she almost gives in to despair. But even then, she does not wish to die, but she just still wants to keep living because she needs to see her daughter, and somewhere in herself still think about one day she will be able to meet Luke. Looking at this quote, I understand this as in the context of a really modernized way that raising a child does not need love, and there's no need for the biological mom to be close to them. Plus, their parents don't even need to love each other to have them. It's a really materialistic kind of thought, but in the political spectrum, this project is a patriarchy of elite white men who oppressed the majority of the population through sexist and racist policies. So this quote just connect me to the next one that I pick. So we know nuclear must have occurred sometime before the setting of the Gilead. The story takes place more than 10 years after the war. I feel like throughout the novel, Alfred has to speculate about how men verbally constructed their sexual and political relationship to women because she only had their words for it. In the historical notes section, which the setting took place a long time after the fall of the Gilead, and it's quite ironic because the broad outline of the moment in history, which makes me think that the author of this essay is talking about how it was too broad to tell which part of the history do we think is most alike with the Gilead era. Finished reading this piece, I believe that most places in the world are getting better. Still, it does not necessarily mean that it will keep the trend going in the same direction forever. Sometimes it might go back and get worse. And that's what Margaret Atwood has been trying to convince us. I mostly agree with Roberta on her logic and connection to the book, A Dystopia World that has been reconstructed through nature and nurture. If nature and nurture are matrix, then there is no point for the government to run because it will be the same everywhere, which nobody gonna be happy to wake up on the next day.